So, Joker is fantastic. As a film, it's amazing. I'll get into that in just a second. This is supposed to be a Music Mondays episode, and it's probably not going to be titled Music Mondays episode, but I'm going to count it as one. It'll be filmed on Monday today, uploaded on Tuesday. I saw it Sunday night, and I saw it with a friend. To be what's considered a good movie, I think that you have to kind of engage your audience enough to feel at least one emotion, maybe two. You can go happy, sad. You can go, just pure sad. You can go angry. You can go with, liberation. You can go with that freeing feeling. You can go with a scared feeling if you're a scary movie. And if you do it successfully, I consider you a good movie. If you can incorporate multiple emotions, and especially differing emotions, then you're probably a really good movie. But a fantastic movie is something that can make you feel whatever it wants you to feel. There are moments in this movie where I felt legitimately awkward, like just uncomfortable watching what was happening on screen. Not because it was like poorly acted, in fact, quite the opposite. It's because it was filmed in a manner of just a moment of such uncomfortability. And that was either through tension or just really awkward things, like him dancing in his underwear alone in a room, and you're sitting there watching it. And that would make me feel awkward in real life, made me feel awkward in the movie, and that's awesome. And there were also moments where you legitimately felt bad for the Joker, more towards the beginning than towards the end, but you actually kind of feel for the guy in this position, and that was amazing as well. And then there were also moments where there were some badass scenes, like some really badass scenes where you're looking at this dude being like, you are one scary motherfucker. And that's great. And to be able to portray that on screen is a testament to the director, the makeup team, the cinematographer, the actor, of course, and the music, the soundtrack, which is bonkers good. So good for a movie. I was actually not expecting the soundtrack to be as good as it has been, only because in all the marketing that I've seen, out, they may have put stuff out there that has it, but I didn't see any of it. They never used any of the original OST. They always used like other songs that they had incorporated to fit into the commercial side scene. So I didn't know what to expect music-wise, but the music here is great. So a little bit of information about the guy who makes it, and I'll put his name up on screen. I cannot pronounce it. I believe his first name is Hildur. He's Icelandic. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he also produced another amazing soundtrack for an actual show, which is Chernobyl, which is a one series show, and that show is really good. This guy has a great choice in what movies and shows he chooses to participate with, and it's fantastic. I was going to actually make a Music Mondays about that soundtrack as well, and I probably won't since I'm doing this one, but I highly recommend checking all of his music out. Now, right when I got home from the movie, I looked up this soundtrack and was just listening to it, and there's actually some of the like very similar sounds from the Chernobyl series in the Joker, and I didn't think it was directly that guy, but I definitely was kind of like, wow, this is really similar to something else I've heard, but I couldn't quite place it. Saw that it was the same artist who made the Chernobyl soundtrack, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes a ton of sense. So I'd highly recommend watching both Joker and the Chernobyl series on, I think it's HBO. Definitely worth it, 100%. It's a great series and a great movie. Now, occasionally when I'm reviewing either a product or an album, I like to kind of summarize it in as little words as possible. And I don't think that there is a better soundtrack to be called hauntingly beautiful. That's the same two words I would use to describe the Chernobyl soundtrack. It's the same words I'm going to describe the Joker soundtrack with, because this thing is on another level. I'm going to get the one and only complaint that I have about this album out of the way, and that's that there's not a lot of fluctuation. Now, that consistency can actually be great for the movie, for the actual film, but if you're just a listener, sometimes a little bit of more variation is going to be good. But again, it's for a movie, so it's kind of purpose built, and succeeds at what it's purpose built for. So this entire album as a whole is using a heavy use of strings and kind of deep percussion. And it's got a lot of bass to it, a lot of really kind of eerie sounds that aren't directly like forcing you to feel like you should be scared of what's happening. Like it's not a horror movie soundtrack or anything like that. And it doesn't have that feeling to it. It actually has it kind of has a beautiful tone and pacing and flow to the music. But then you get these deep and rich hard-hitting notes or the hard-hitting strings that they use. Now I'm not sure what instrument exactly they're using. I think it's probably either a bass recorded really, really close up and in a particularly bassy area. Possibly a double bass and potentially a octo bass, but those are pretty rare. But the soundtrack has some really, really deep strings that just sound awesome. Like there's no other word. They're so powerful in the movie. They're so well timed in the movie too. The music itself just has this incredible performance in the movie, and it really takes up a life of its own and really adds, which is exactly what a soundtrack is supposed to do. It adds to the movie. Now, before I tell you about the 3 songs that I want to draw the most attention to, I want to talk about like the fidelity of the recording. It's not the greatest recording in the world. It's decent, it's okay, it's good enough. But for you super high fidelity freaks, it's not really going to be like the craziest thing in the world. So don't go in expecting that. Just go in expecting like great tones, a little bit of texture, but not much. And it's really just about kind of the feeling of the music, not necessarily the cleanliness of the recording. So I just want to get that out there, just so that everybody's on the same page of what to expect. Okay, so the 3 songs that I felt were kind of the best of this album and the ones I want to talk about is Following Sophie, Penny Taken to the Hospital, and Call Me Joker. And I thought those 3 songs, if you're going to kind of spot check the album and you just want to hit kind of the highlight bullet points, those 3 are the way to go. I think that's going to give you a good example of the music as a whole, a good example of the album, and different kind of feelings within the album. Most of these songs are relatively kind of slow paced. There's not a whole lot going on, but Following Sophie is kind of where the album starts to pick up a little bit and you start getting a little bit more hardcore with the sounds, a little bit more haunting. And that's about track number 3. And I think it's fantastic. The speed of the growth in it. And I also really like kind of the deep down terrifying nature of what this music represents. And if you were to just listen to the soundtrack, you'd get one experience with it. But when you add the context of the movie and the scenes that this music is happening in, and you get that dark grit that goes along with it, you start to really understand the music in a, maybe not better light, but in a different light. Like you get a different perspective on it. The ability for both the film and the music to stand alone, but also play well off of one another and give you different perspectives on each. It's one of those great combinations. It's like Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer. The next song I chose was Penny Taken to the Hospital. And this isn't a particularly exciting song. I just kind of like what it does. Like it goes from, like in the very beginning, it's kind of weird and quirky. Like it's kind of a little bit upbeat and it's kind of neat. And then it kind of progresses into something not necessarily forcing itself to be seen as darker, but it maintains a little bit of that offbeat nature to it, but in less of a quirky way and more of an eerie way. And you're like, okay, something's going weird here. Like something's a little bit different, but it's not kind of directly telling you. And I kind of like the more subtle nature of this particular song. So I thought that was great. And then to wrap this up, the takeaway song, by nobody's surprise, is going to be Call Me Joker. And I think this is both a good representation of this album as a whole and everything that it's capable of, and it's a good representation of the movie. And it can kind of summarize everything auditorily for you. And that's, I think, what kind of the prime time song should be. So what makes this track really good is it's one of the 4-minute tracks. It's actually almost 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 48 seconds. There's a lot of stuff happening here. There's a long growth and a slow acceleration towards the end, which is sort of reminiscent to what the movie feels like. There's a strong kind of reestablishing beat of the drum that continues out through the entire song. And I'm a sucker for those drum beats, man. Like I really get into that kind of strong, impactful, consistent kind of, like that really strong bump that you get that like kind of re-engages you with the music every few seconds. There's different types of strings, different pacing. You get some of the oddity and some of the strength, and then you get some of the kind of sweet nature, and then you get some of the raw kind of scary AF nature. And if you put the song in the right context, it's extraordinarily powerful. And I think that's what great music is. So overall, I think this album, just because of the consistency of everything, is going to get a little bit knocked down. I'd say that for like a film score, this is about an 8 out of 10. And as an overall music album, not considering the movie, it's probably about a 7 out of 10. It's got a really great beat to most of it, but it's not as kind of diverse as I would like. And calculating the recording quality and everything, I think a 7 is about fair for this as a standalone album. But luckily, it's not a standalone album. It is an OST, so it goes with a great movie. And for that, it gets some bonus points. And I walked out of the theater thinking that the soundtrack was just incredible. So I highly recommend you check it out. I'll leave links to places where you can check it out down in the description below. And later, part of the reason why I have this out is because I didn't feel like setting everything up while I was filming. Tomorrow, I will have I'm going to be doing a sort of ongoing series about the gear that I use to film my videos. Microphones are going to be the first episode, and I have 3 total microphones that I want to draw some attention to. And this is one of them. So right before I leave, I think I'm going to give Joker a 8.5 out of 10. It was pretty good. I wish the pacing was a little bit faster, but just emotionally, the cinematography of everything, you got like Brian Callen in there, which is pretty funny. There's a lot of things that go into that movie to make it a great movie, soundtrack being one of them. I think an 8.5 out of 10 is about where I placed it. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap it up. Until the next video, which is going to be tomorrow. So subscribe, ring that bell, like the video, comment down below. You know the drill. My name's Josh, signing off.